All right, guys. So we're going to review a video today. This is not necessarily a political channel, but we do focus on barbering, entrepreneurship, and technology with a sprinkle of relevant culture. And with everything that's going on right now with the presidential election, we have one of our politicians. His name is Vivek Ramaswamy. This is my first time actually listening to him in depth about some of his ideas and some of his policies. But they're focusing on the debate, some AI technology, and the future of AI from a policy standpoint. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the video here real quick.
We're a technology show, and I've wanted to ask you to come on following the debate because of your background, because of the reporting of your relationship with former President Trump and the Trump campaign team. But we should talk about last night. So the floor is yours, your reaction to that debate.
Well, look, I was in Atlanta last night, got back to my home in Columbus today, and after sleeping on it, my conclusion's the same as what we saw last night, which is this was sad for the United States of America to see the current president, Joe Biden, in the mental state that he's actually in. There was a lot of joking about drug testing or were they going to drug him up. It looked more like he had a lobotomy. And I just think that that's a sad thing speaking as an American.
Hey, is this guy a Republican or a Democrat? It sounds like he's a Republican, saying that Joe Biden had a lobotomy. Oh, man.
Regardless of partisanship. When you think about the country that has produced the greatness of innovation and the leaders leading companies in the private sector, to see the person who's leading the federal government himself be as absent as he was yesterday, I think is really a damning indictment of the modern Democratic Party. I thought President Trump did a good job. Yep.
Mr. Ramaswamy, may I just jump in? And it's interesting that you ran as a presidential candidate for the Republican Party. You're representing former President Trump. But you started by speaking about President Biden's performance. Many are frustrated this morning that we actually didn't hear any answers to the questions posed to former President Trump about what he would do if re-elected, what some of his policy platforms were. What did you learn about what former President Trump?
Hey, that's a good question right there. We were all focusing on Joe Biden's looks and health, and yeah, we didn't get a good policy debate.
Might do were he to be re-elected to the White House.
Well, you asked me about my impressions, and I think the number one most salient thing about the debate for anybody who watched it was indeed the surprise of Biden's performance, which is why I commented on it in response to your question. But I agree with you. It's much more productive to talk about the policy vision of the man who's likely to be the next president, which is Donald Trump. And I think one of the things we took away from yesterday was talking about the revival of American success and a focus on the economy. The fact of the matter is President Trump, I think, demonstrated that despite being a member of a different economic class than most Americans, as a billionaire, he is still somebody who understands prices have gone up, but wages have remained flat. And I think that part really landed. I wish the debate had gone into greater depth on policy. Frankly, if Biden had shown up with greater mental acuity, we might have had that opportunity. In many cases, the things he said were incoherent that stopped that debate from being as useful as it could. But what did we learn last night and in the combination of recent speeches that President Trump has given? Economic growth is a core objective for Donald Trump. That's not a left-leaning message or a right-leaning message. Economic growth is an inherent and worthy objective. From bringing down the tax burden to the regulatory burden to drilling for oil and natural gas and increasing the...
Hey, real quick, speaking of economic growth, if we got any barbers or service industry professionals watching the video right now, let me know in the comments, how has the economy been for you guys? One of the things that we like to talk about on the channel is how to grow your service-based business. And I would be real interested in knowing how your prices have been. I know in the barber industry, I've seen a lot of prices for haircuts actually going up. I've seen a lot of customers complaining about the price of haircuts going up. I wonder if that's the same sentiment across all service-based industries. Let me know in the comments, guys.
Supply of energy to bring down costs. Those are core issues that I think matter not only to business owners and economically minded voters. It's a factor that matters to all voters. And that was one of the more powerful things that came out of last night was the discussion about the economy and the economic vision for the next 4 years.
Mr. Ramaswamy, may I just point out what you said on prices and also wage inflation? You said prices have gone up, but wages have remained flat. that is no longer true. If you look today, we saw inflation in May down fractionally, almost negligibly, but wages were up 0.7%. I just want to get the latest data out there.
Let me just comment on that in direct response to you. So you're a numbers guy. I like that.
So he said wages are going up a little bit and prices have gone up. Now, when it comes to inflation is always good to the businesses. It's never good for the consumers. Once businesses, in this case, I'm a barber, our haircut prices have gone up. After, inflation is under control, our prices are probably not going to come back down. And that's probably across the board with multiple industries. Once businesses see that customers are willing to pay a certain price, those prices usually don't come back down. So it'd be interesting to see what he says here about people's wages. Let's see.
As you well know, I believe you well know, inflation is accumulative, right? So that is the inflation rate. But inflation over the course of the last several years, you want to look at actual many consumer goods and products are up by over 50% since the time Biden took office. How much does a carton of egg cost? How much does a car cost? How much is your electric bill? Those are undoubtedly higher than when Joe Biden took office. And it is a hard fact that wages have not gone up at the same rate. So I don't want to play this verbal jujitsu of the last month's numbers. If you want to get into facts, I'm all in favor of it. Those are the hard, indisputable facts. And we don't have to argue the facts because most Americans who pay those bills already have a deep understanding of that. And I do think that that is going to be a guiding force in what we see this November.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you and I both agreed on one thing, which is that we will talk about technology and policy from a technology standpoint. You mentioned energy and oil in particular. One of the things that I reported was that you act as almost an intermediary between former President Trump and Elon Musk. And it seems as if the former president and Elon Musk are now speaking, or at least have spoken. Where do you see them finding middle ground and an influence if former President Trump were to return to the White House?
Well, I respect the two of them individually, both as people who have succeeded in this country through the private sector. I think we all share a belief, all three of us, that we need more of those voices in American politics driving change, not as professional politicians, but people who look at political problems through the lens of an entrepreneur and a business leader objectively. And so I think that that's a common cause that I would say has formed my basis for the friendship with both of them. The reality is one of the things that we're all rooting for as well is not only an economic revitalization of the U.S., but a revitalization of innovation in the United States of America. I think we have seen a decline in the rate of innovation in the U.S., but that is ultimately our competitive advantage in the end. Is the ultimate innovation and the innovative spark.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I agree with him. It seems like to me that innovation is taking place at a high rate right now with all the AI technology, with all the software as a service. That industry is real innovative right now. As entrepreneurs, as somebody that's a service-based professional, I'm constantly looking for new technologies to enhance my business, to make sure that I get a competitive advantage over my competitors. So I don't know where he's going with that, but let's continue to see.
Of starting the greatest companies known to mankind, generally here in the United States, which then has collateral benefits of creating jobs and creating wealth. But it's also the founding spark of American exceptionalism. Right, our founding fathers were the likes of Thomas Jefferson, who not only wrote the Declaration of Independence, he also invented the swivel chair and the polygraph test. Benjamin Franklin, I think of Elon Musk as a modern Benjamin Franklin type of figure, invented the lightning rod and the Franklin stove. Yet these were also the people.
One thing else, we also got to be careful because it seems like there's a lot of talk about innovation actually taking away people's jobs. I wonder how that's going to be looked at throughout this presidential debate conversation. This is probably going to be the first presidential election where AI is going to be a part of the conversation. It'll be interesting to see how they discuss AI.
Who led the country politically and set it into motion. So I think we have a chance to revive that 1776 kind of spirit. And I think there's a role for a modern Washington, a modern Jefferson, a modern Benjamin Franklin. I think In many ways, Donald Trump is stepping up to be the modern George Washington of our time. Elon Musk reminds me of the Benjamin Franklins of their day. And so I think we found different common cause in our love of this country to revitalize that founding spirit, even though each of us have had our own successes separately in the private sector. And I'm biased, but I'm of the view that we need actually more of those people stepping up to play different.
That's interesting to hear him say Elon Musk is the modern day Benjamin Franklin and Donald Trump is the modern day George Washington. It kind of gives history a little bit more perspective to me. It makes it a little bit more real. I've never thought of making that comparison before, but it's interesting to hear somebody say that.
Roles in defining the future of our politics in America.
Mr. Ramaswamy, can I ask just very quickly, as a matter of checking, have you spoken to the former president since last night?
I haven't spoken to him since last night, no.
The reason I ask is about your role with him directly and also his team. You know, one of the areas of reporting of focus has been discussions you may have had with him around crypto and the role that crypto may play if former President Trump returns to the White House. Could you tell me a bit about that and the conversations that you've had?
Well, some of that started actually after I left the race. I left the race after the Iowa caucus, but before the New Hampshire primary. And I could tell you one part that was sort of totally public on that stage was in New Hampshire, I began my conversations with Donald Trump about why in my campaign I had been opposed to a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. And one of the things that impressed me about President Trump was his intellectual curiosity about that issue. I've met a lot of politicians, including Republicans, who have heard the vague acronym CBDC but don't know the first thing about what it actually means. But they pretend like they do. Donald Trump was
CBDC, central bank digital currency. Let me know if you guys have heard about that in the comments. I've heard rumors about it. I don't know too much about it, but it's from what I have heard about it, it seems like it's something that kind of can be scary. I heard that once we go over to a CBDC, they literally can control everything about what we do. They can control everything in our bank account. They can control all of our digital currency. If you represent a ideology or a political faction or party that people don't like, they'll just cut your CBDC off. Let me know in the comments if you guys have heard of this CBDC, and if you guys want me to do a little bit more digging into it and bring you guys a video on that.
The opposite of that. He actually said, what the heck is that? Tell me what it is. And then he asked me, what are the best arguments for why they're actually supporting it? And I thought that was a mark of a good leader who wanted to understand the best arguments for the other side. And later on, he said it from the campaign stage and at an event, so I feel comfortable sharing this part of it, where he came out then, after a thoughtful consideration, after careful study of the issue, of his opposition to a central bank digital currency. And he explained why. It's a threat to liberty. The flip side of that is why you might favor decentralization and alternative options from people just staying tethered to the dollar, of holding the Fed accountable by having other options in the marketplace of alternative currencies. So I think those have been a number of productive conversations he and I have had. And one of the things that I look at this for is it's not a sector. I don't look at cryptocurrency as a sector. To the contrary, I look at the first principles of the United States of America founded on competition and choice and financial freedom. And I think those principles are certainly what motivated my interest in these issues in the campaign. And I think that's what's also helped a lot of my conversations with President Trump is, let's start with first principles of what's right for America, not what's good for one sector or another. But then let's adopt the kinds of policies that actually allow America to remain the beachhead of innovation rather than playing from behind.
Mr. Ramaswamy, just one item on the idea the president has to block anything or anyone from doing CBDC. I think the Fed has said clearly many times that it's not going to introduce one unless mandated by Congress. No, that's the Fed's position on that. I wanted to ask you about artificial intelligence.
And just since we're closing the loop on that, Janet Yellen has certainly stood for her advocacy.
Man, isn't it crazy how our currency is regulated by the Fed, and they said that they're not going to do something unless it's regulated by Congress? I don't know. It seems like the Fed is not a part of the government, and Congress have to disallow or allow the Feds to be able to do something But however, the Fed seem that they can do whatever they want to do with the economy. It's a crazy relationship. We're gonna be doing a lot of learning on this channel. If you want to know more about business, entrepreneurship, money, how money works, how it impacts your business, how it impacts your service based business, make sure you guys subscribe on the channel because we're gonna be doing a lot of learning on this channel.
Because the executive branch often sponsors legislation that goes through Congress. That's how things work in Washington, D.C. But I do think it's good to have a president, one way or another, that's clear about his position. And I think that Donald Trump adopted the right position in his clarity.
I would like to talk about artificial intelligence, and I appreciate that this was not a question posed last night, but any of the policy questions posed weren't really answered by either participant. But when former President Trump was in office, we weren't talking about the idea of an existential threat from a large language model in the many hundreds of billions of parameters. We weren't talking about the need to regulate AI. So former President Trump doesn't have the experience of that. But do you think that he has the sort of academic study enough, or he's thought about it? Because going into office, if he were to regain the White House, would be an issue to consider.
I do wish this had been a topic, both at that debate and even in the Republican primary debates, where this issue did not come up once as well, even though I suggested it many times. It's an important issue for the future, and it falls outside of traditional partisan boundaries. So I'm glad you're bringing it up. Is President Trump going to claim to be a domain expert in AI or something that he's not a domain expert in? No, and that's what I love about him. But I think he's going to be able to attract the best minds around him to set rational policy that at once allows the U.S. to be a leader in innovation, while at the same time acknowledging a different kind of risk than we've faced in the past from different types of generative AI. Personally, one of the things that I think makes a lot of sense as a first step, rather than creating some sort of central government bureaucracy to handle this, is just treat it the same way you treat other sectors, just in the same way that you're a chemicals manufacturer and you can't dump in somebody else's river. If you're the developer of a protocol or an algorithm that has unpredictable but nonetheless realized negative effects, that you're liable for those effects. Basic principles of the law that we already use elsewhere, but to use them in this new domain as well. And what I have seen from President Trump, it's the same question that came up even in the last topic we discussed, is a level of intellectual curiosity. Somebody who has been an executive, somebody who, unlike Joe Biden, frankly, from seeing what we saw last night, is still intellectually with it enough to be able to go deep on the details, attract the best people, and make the rational policy decision, not in an ideological or ideologue-driven manner when it comes to AI, but in a manner that's driven by our actual understanding of the facts. And so I do have confidence in his ability to lead here.
Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're short of time, and I want to make the most of it.
All right, let me know what you guys think about Vivek Ramaswamy. He just gave his take on artificial intelligence, crypto, the debate. When it comes to this artificial intelligence, I'm all for it. I'm not the gloom and doom pessimistic type of thinker. I believe in being optimistic, being innovative, and if negative things come up, handling those things as they come. But I don't operate out of fear. I try to look at the facts and make sure that it is what it is. You know what I mean? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like I said before, if you're interested in learning more on this channel about business, barbering, or service-based professionals or technology, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We recently started a YouTube club. You can check the link in the description. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video.